Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu and welcome to Spotlight. Built over 130 years ago, the Goulborn Correctional Facility has maintained its reputation as Australia's most feared jail. Goulborn's High Risk Management Unit, more commonly known as the Supermax, was opened in 2001 as a purpose-built facility to house those prisoners who posed the greatest threat to society. Supermax prisoners are bound by a minimum of 16 and maximum of 22 hours of complete isolation from other prisoners. All movement is closely monitored, with prisoners shackled at the ankles and wrist whenever outside their cell. On Sunday, the 8th of March 2015, Corrective Services New South Wales announced a series of changed arrangements specifically for the 13 prisoners within Supermax, all of whom have been detained on terrorism-related charges, including some of who are yet to be convicted. These tougher security regulations include the banning of all languages other than English spoken between inmates and their families. They are no longer permitted to have contact visits, and any visit deemed suitable by the prison must now take place in a small steel room divided by a perspex screen with little ventilation. Prisoners have also had their buy-up accounts reduced from $100 to a mere $15.50 per week. The reduction in funds has reportedly limited their ability to purchase halal food, as well as their ability to make phone calls and send letters to their family and legal counsel. In protest of these changes, it is reported that 5 inmates have embarked upon a hunger strike. When asked about this, Corrective Services Minister David Elliott said, "I will not be influenced by the fact that those affected by the restrictions don't like them." Onepath Network has spoken with family members who do not wish to be identified about their experiences in the wake of these changes, stating that it has left them frustrated, vulnerable and helpless, and that it has also caused great distress to the inmates who are left with no explanation for the sudden crackdown. An online petition has also been launched by family members in a bid to raise awareness of the current changes. A spokesperson from the Australian National Imams Council, ANIC, has told Onepath Network that they have met and listened to the concerns of the family members and have already contacted the relevant authorities and government agencies to discuss the matter. Onepath Network also contacted Human Rights Commissioner Tim Wilson and the New South Wales Corrective Services Commissioner Peter Severin, but both have declined to comment on the current situation. With me in the studio is Brett Collins, the coordinator of Justice Action, which is a non-for-profit community organisation based in Sydney that focuses on abuses of authority in the criminal justice and mental health systems in Australia. Brett, welcome to the show.
Good, thank you for being here.
Brett, there has been some concerns regarding the treatment of Supermax prisoners at Goulborn Jail. Have you had any contact with the prisoners or their families?
Yes, we have. Actually, for over quite a long period. There have been a number of issues such as having contact with their lawyers and also just the entitlement for people to have their prayers and to have respect for religious observances inside that particular high risk management unit. So we've been watching it. We're concerned about what's happening in there. And
how do you assess the way that they are being treated, the prisoners specifically?
Look, it's quite clear that they're being treated differently than other prisoners, and even the decision to actually put them in that particular unit, where they're restricted in their right of association and many other rights of food, rights of exercise, a whole range of issues are affected. They don't have jobs, they don't have a chance to do education. So we're very concerned about the decisions, first of all, to put them in there, and the conditions which have arbitrarily been imposed upon them.
Okay, now in relation to these new restrictions and measures that have been implemented, the cutting down on allowances, the restriction of communications with family members, etc., is this something new, or is this something that's quite expected from the prison system, considering the fact that some of these people are still yet to be convicted?
Look, this is totally new. In fact, it's really moving into a whole area of the basic human rights of people who are not even convicted of offences, but even people who are convicted of offences still retain the entitlement to communicate with their families, entitlement to actually have legal restrictions on their procedures, on their entitlements. A whole range of things do accrue to them. And in this situation, it hasn't been acknowledged. We're most concerned about, for example, access to lawyers and the entitlement to speak the language which is the language of their families, and religious observances should be, as a matter of right, protected. And we are not seeing that happening.
Now, in following the Goulborn riots that happened last year, you mentioned and said that tensions inside the facility were reaching a boiling point. Due to disrespect towards religious observation, specifically towards Muslim prisoners. Do you feel that some of these recent changes that have aggravated the condition even more for the Muslim inmates inside this particular facility?
Look, there's no question that is happening. In fact, what's happening really, I think, is that is people inside the prison are seeing the tensions outside the jail as well, and out in, like in the general community, the internationally as well, and they're seeing this as being, I guess, an oppression directed directly towards unpopular prisoners. So the Muslims themselves, first of all, are getting a hard time inside jail. And secondly, there are some people who actually are prepared to stand beside them as being those who are equally oppressed, who feel oppressed. So there's a tension now rising inside the prison system. And the way they're treating these particular prisoners inside the high-risk management unit is, I suppose, a crucible, right, of the worst. To remove the rights of food, to buy food independently, that's unheard of. To talk about further restrictions on visits, never been discussed before. So these things are new inroads into what have been accepted rights for prisoners forever, for decades.
And you're someone that has known the prison system for quite a long time.
Look, I have in fact personal experience myself from over 30 years ago. I was actually in prison in these units myself, and I know what it's like to be restricted. And 30 years ago, there was never a situation where you would be held for indefinitely in a space where you've never been accused of an offence, in an internal prison offence, and be treated differently than other prisoners. That would never occur. There are certain standards of treatment inside prisons which include the right to be charged with an offence, the right to be defended and have a proper appeal, and then to have a restricted removal of rights. Now those things are procedural rights. They're the rights to be treated fairly and to feel as though you've been treated fairly. In this situation, they have arbitrarily removed a whole range of entitlements, long-held entitlements, without any hearings, without any accusation, arbitrarily on the say-so of the prison administration. Now that should cease. There should be the right of law, the rule of law, extending into prisons. Otherwise, what we'll have will be a feeling inside prisons that people are not being respected at all. And that can actually have a backlash with the attitude of prisoners when they are released, and also with the behaviour of people inside the prisons.
And even in your advocacy work and your long experience advocating for prisoners' rights, have you seen any of these measures used in the past? Look,
it has never happened before. And in fact, there's always been a sense that it doesn't work for the prison administration to be seen to be unfair, that to treat prisoners fairly always draws the best thing out of prisoners. And in fact, we should never forget that the intention of the prison system is to ensure that people, when they are released, are actually better able to fit into the community. They learn new skills. But in this situation, what's happening is they're being restricted. They're being taken away from their families. They're being treated unfairly. And the only result of that will be that people will be more likely to feel resentful, and they're more likely to feel more unfairly oppressed, and this is more likely to incubate the very problems they're talking about from preventing.
Now, questions are surfacing around about the possible violations of prisoners' human rights in light of these changes. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh, look, there's no question. These are violations of human rights. I mean, the right of communication with family, the right of your own culture to speak the language of your choice. Now, all these are human rights without a question. And it would take very little effort by the administration, by the minister, right, to ensure that these human rights are being protected. The problem, of course, is there aren't the legal defences for those rights to be protected. The right to education, use your time properly, to have the same conditions as other prisoners. Now, those are not rights that have been presented and able to be argued before the courts.
And your advocacy group has already spoken to the minister in regards to this?
We certainly have. In fact, we've taken up the issue of arbitrary punishment, the decision not to charge people and to remove the rights of prisoners without any hearing, any accusation. These are very serious inroads into the rule of law, and it's happening inside prisons. It might be a short-term, easy management style, but it has a long-term destructive effect on the people themselves and the management of the prison and the administration.
Now, Muslims are upset, especially given that within the Muslim community, there is, the treatment of prisoners is something, a good treatment of prisoners is something that's highly encouraged. So that's something that's within our faith. What advice would you give to all those that are concerned about the justice in such matters? Oh, look, we've found in the past just focusing on these people as real people,
as to have names and have faces, to have families speaking for them to be presented widely, for them to be seen as the the people, real people, right? Who have families around them. And the use of social media, the use of feeling proud, not feeling ashamed, of recognising that kids can do things, quite often say things that they would prefer not to have said, or now under the glare of a spotlight that wasn't intended and should ever have been targeted on them. So I think they're the sort of things that the family should express, that the media, supportive media, should ensure gets out, and then support for them to be presented at all opportunities, to linkages to be made back into the community, and for people to see these as being basic issues of principle that must be defended at all costs.
And who do you think are the right departments that people should communicate with in this regard?
Oh, look, I think it's obvious that the Premier should be talked to, the Minister regarding this should be talked to, and then what we should also include is to ensure that these prisons actually are brought out more, that they shouldn't be left inside their cells and abandoned inside their cells. There should be a chance for them to be interviewed by the media, to present themselves as people. That in fact, if they are public interest prisoners and there are issues of some sort, then it's fair that the media should be able to go in there and talk to them and give them a chance to express themselves and to be seen for what they are. And then there should be special services offered to them as well. There should be not just religious services, but services like online services where they have a chance to use their time in their cells instead of being left alone in the corner of a cell for 23 hours a day, isolated, and then left in solitary confinement for that one day out in the yard. They should have online services in the cell with access to a computer through some safe server, and have positive things coming into their lives where they have linkages to their families in the way that they have a chance to develop and expand, rather than negatively attempt to be crushed, which can only have a counterproductive effect.
Do you believe, Brett, that national security is a justification for these new measures?
Look, you can always use the term national security to justify any sort of behaviour. I mean, we've seen this abuse again and again, and later has been exposed as a tissue of lies. What we need to have here is a statement of principles about the human rights of people who are under the control of the state, and there should be clear restrictions on any abuses of power. And what's happening clearly inside the unit at the moment with these particular prisons is an abuse of power and restrictions that are not justified and can only be counterproductive.
Brett Collins, the coordinator for Justice Action, the community-based group, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Milas.
And thank you for watching. You can join the conversation on our Facebook page, Onepath Network, or you can send us an email to spotlight@onepathnetwork.com. Until next time, I leave you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.